I woke up already written into failure, not because I had done anything wrong, but because the story demanded it. In the novel I had fallen into, my role was fixed and cruel. I was the legal wife who existed only to contrast the heroine's purity. I was supposed to obsess, scheme, copy her smile and her tears, humiliate myself again and again, and finally collapse into madness so the male lead could cast me aside without guilt. That was the narrative arc carved out for me. I stood in front of the mirror, absorbing the reality of the body I now occupied. The woman staring back was striking in a sharp, unapologetic way, not soft or comforting, but vivid and intense, the kind of beauty that didn't beg for approval. In my hand was a jet black card with no limit, the kind of financial freedom that could erase problems instead of creating them. Behind me, a closet overflowed with designer bags, jewelry, and clothes that could fund multiple lifetimes. The absurdity hit me all at once, and I laughed. The story wanted me in an institution, stripped of dignity and agency, but it had dropped me into wealth and power instead. If someone needed to suffer for the plot to move forward, it wouldn't be me. I decided then, with absolute clarity, that I would exit the narrative entirely. I would take the money meant to trap me and build a life that belonged to me alone. That decision had barely settled when reality turned violent. His hand closed around my throat without warning, fingers hard and precise, cutting off air in seconds. The man who was supposed to be my husband smelled like fresh flowers and damp earth, the scent of a funeral clinging to him, twisted together with his usual clean, expensive cologne. It was suffocating in every sense. He leaned close, eyes burning with controlled fury, and told me in a quiet voice that if anything happened to the woman he loved, I would pay for it with my life. My vision blurred, my lungs screamed, and a tear slipped free despite my effort to stay composed. That single tear sealed my fate in his mind. In the original story, the woman whose body I now inhabited had practiced crying in front of mirrors, perfecting an imitation of the heroine's fragile expression. So to him, this was just another performance. He shoved me away like something dirty, and I slammed into the vanity, coughing violently as air tore back into my chest. He looked at me with pure contempt, warned me one last time to stay away from her, and walked out, slamming the door hard enough to shake the walls. I slid down against the counter, shaking, hand pressed to my burning throat, understanding with brutal clarity that this world was not safe for me if I followed the script. I stared at my reflection again, this time seeing the damage clearly. Red marks bloomed across my neck, my eyes were wet and unfocused, my hair tangled. Still, even like this, the face looking back was undeniably beautiful, too bold for the role it had been assigned. In the novel, that beauty was treated like a flaw. The male lead preferred innocence and fragility, and because the wife could never become that, she was doomed no matter what she tried. Touching my bruised skin grounded me in the truth. This was not a dream or a hallucination. I had crossed into a story that ended badly for me. The threat echoed in my head, and with it came memory fragments of the plot. The heroine had been involved in a minor accident, nothing serious, but enough to provoke outrage and suspicion. The wife had been blamed without evidence, confronted, humiliated, and pushed further down the path to ruin. I understood then that every interaction with these people would only tighten the noose. I refused to wait for that ending. Fear sharpened into resolve. I wrapped myself in a thick robe, covering the marks on my neck, and made a promise to myself. I would not beg, I would not explain, and I would not compete. I would disappear from their story before it could consume me. The next morning confirmed my decision. The woman he loved woke up unharmed, surrounded by concern and devotion. No one came to question me or accuse me further. The silence was a gift. I took it and ran. The penthouse we shared was massive and immaculate, but it felt like a museum dedicated to my own humiliation. Too many memories, too much risk. I called an agent and asked for a new place, downtown, spacious, bright, and ready immediately. By afternoon, I was standing in a sunlit apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city that made me feel untouchable. I moved in with only a few suitcases, leaving the rest behind like shed skin. When I finally sat down on the sofa, the quiet wrapped around me like a blanket. For the first time since waking up in this world, I felt safe. That night, I slept without fear of footsteps in the hallway or doors slamming open. I woke the next day with a plan, clear and methodical. Step 1 was distance. Step 2 was money. Step 3 was cutting every invisible thread that tied me back to the plot. When I opened my banking app, the numbers were almost comical. Monthly transfers continued to arrive like clockwork, an obscene amount of money deposited for the sake of appearances. The woman before me had clung to love while ignoring this power. I felt pure joy looking at those balances. With that kind of financial cushion, I didn't need to tolerate anyone. I began terminating contracts immediately. Investigators, assistants, intermediaries, all the people who had been paid to watch, report, and manipulate on her behalf. Each message was short and final. Agreement terminated. Final payment sent. Do not contact me again. Blocked. Deleted. One by one, the background noise of surveillance disappeared. Then I opened the chat history with my husband. It was painful to read, filled with concern and care that had never been returned. I rewrote my final message 3 times before sending something calm and distant, clarifying my lack of involvement in the accident, informing him I had moved out, and wishing him well. No emotion. No apology. I renamed his contact to something impersonal and silenced notifications. The quiet that followed felt like freedom. Life after that became something I had never experienced before. I dressed for comfort instead of approval. I ate what I wanted, whenever I wanted, exploring street food stalls and late-night markets with reckless joy. The woman who came before me had restricted herself to muted colors and delicate movements to please a man who barely noticed her. I wore oversized shirts with ridiculous prints, ripped jeans, sandals, and went out barefaced. People still stared. Beauty didn't disappear just because I stopped performing. I stopped attending suffocating social events and filled my days with movies, games, and food. My home became a sanctuary of noise and laughter instead of tension. As for my husband, he stayed silent. No messages, no visits. The money still arrived. That suited me just fine. We existed on parallel lines, connected only by paper, and I was determined to keep it that way. That illusion of peace cracked when his family forced me back into their orbit. His mother's birthday was unavoidable, a grand event at an estate that symbolized everything rigid and suffocating about their world. I chose my outfit carefully, not to impress, but to avoid giving them ammunition. A simple black dress, modest and unremarkable, my hair pulled back neatly, minimal jewelry. I covered the fatting marks on my neck with a scarf. When I arrived, the stares were immediate, sharp, and curious. Whispers followed me like a breeze. Women dressed in excessive luxury looked me up and down, disappointed at the lack of drama. One of them approached, her voice deliberately loud, commenting on how plain I looked and wondering aloud if my husband had stopped spending money on me. In the past, that would have provoked tears or anger. This time, I responded calmly, pointing out flaws in her own appearance with surgical politeness. Her smile froze. Another woman joined in, and I returned the favor, casually referencing the borrowed jewelry she was wearing and the rumors surrounding her husband's business. I walked away without waiting for a response, leaving them flustered and exposed. Their games bored me. I headed straight for the food. I was reaching for dessert when his presence hit me like a cold wave. He stood nearby, immaculate in a tailored suit, the woman he loved at his side, pale and delicate in soft fabric. The contrast between us was deliberate and cruel. He looked at me with thinly veiled disgust and told me to go greet his mother, reminding me not to embarrass the family. She touched his arm gently, apologizing for him with a voice full of false concern. I was exhausted by the performance. Instead of responding, I took the slice of cake in my hand and ate it in front of them, messily and without shame. His expression darkened. Hers froze. I swallowed, grabbed a glass of wine, and walked away. Later, when his mother criticized my appearance and ordered me to stay by his side, I bowed politely, claimed illness, and excused myself. I left early, calmly, and decisively, feeling eyes and whispers follow me out into the night air. For the first time, I didn't care what they thought. Weeks later, the real fracture happened at another family banquet, one even more formal and oppressive. I prepared carefully, wearing something conservative and inoffensive, playing the role they expected on the surface while guarding my boundaries inside. The dinner dragged on with speeches and forced smiles. When the woman he loved approached with a glass of wine to propose a toast, I raised my glass of juice instead. Disapproval rippled through the table. His relatives scolded me openly, and he ordered me to pick up the wine like a disobedient child. Something inside me snapped, not in anger but in clarity. I calmly reached for a serving spoon, scooped a generous portion of fiery, oil-soaked beef from a nearby dish, and poured it into the wine glass she was holding. The room froze. Shock, horror, and outrage collided in the silence. I smiled sweetly and wished her good fortune, calling it a toast. Someone laughed, sharp and uncontrollable. He exploded in fury, shouting my name, while she trembled on the verge of tears. I met his gaze without flinching and asked calmly if my presence was what truly embarrassed the family. He had no answer. He stormed out with her in tow, humiliation trailing behind them like smoke. After that night, the narrative branded me a madwoman. Gossip spread like wildfire, each retelling more exaggerated than the last. I was painted as jealous, unstable, and vengeful. I didn't bother correcting it. The money still arrived on time. Life went on. I slept late, ordered food, and enjoyed my days in peace. Then my biological mother appeared, furious and demanding, slamming gossip magazines onto my table and accusing me of ruining the family's prospects. She berated me for eating, for living, for not securing my position. She demanded I beg for forgiveness, return to that house, and even get pregnant to lock myself into place. I listened quietly, feeling nothing. When she invoked the debt of raising me, something finally shifted. I told her I would repay every cent the family had spent on me. I named a number large enough to leave her speechless. I offered to transfer it all and sever ties completely. Her anger turned to shock, then disbelief. I told her calmly that my future had nothing to do with the family anymore. She left in a storm of rage, and when the door closed behind her, the silence felt heavy but clean. Months passed. Autumn arrived. My life settled into a quiet rhythm of simple pleasures. One afternoon, a food documentary tempted me out of the house, leading me to a small, unremarkable noodle shop tucked into an alley. The smell of broth and chili oil filled the air. As I waited for my order, I heard a familiar voice nearby. He was there, sitting with the woman he loved, discussing business troubles. When my noodles arrived, steaming and red, our eyes met briefly. I ignored him and ate with reckless focus, savoring every bite. To my surprise, he ordered the same dish. He suffered through the spice, coughing and flushing, his perfect composure shattering in public. I laughed, unable to stop myself. He left in a fury, dragging her along, leaving the bowl untouched. It was absurd and deeply satisfying. After that, he vanished completely. Even the monthly transfers stopped. I checked my accounts and shrugged. I had more than enough. The last tie was gone. Winter came, and with it a hot spring trip where fate brought us into proximity again. I overheard them arguing, her insecurity spilling out in sharp accusations, his patience wearing thin. When he approached me afterward, exhausted and human, he apologized in his own stiff way, admitting he had been wrong about me. I accepted nothing and offered nothing. When he told me the noodles had been good, I nodded and walked away. His realization came far too late to matter. The call from his lawyer came in spring. Divorce papers, full control over terms, property and funds left entirely to me. I signed immediately without hesitation, feeling nothing but relief. When the decree arrived, it felt like a passport. I sold my apartment quickly and cheaply, packed my suitcase, and walked away without looking back. In a busy neighborhood far from luxury estates, I rented a tiny storefront and opened a noodle shop. No glamour, no pretense. Just broth, heat, and honest work. The shop filled with life and laughter. One day, he walked in, looking smaller, more human, and ordered noodles. I charged him full price. He paid without complaint. I turned back to my dishes, the sound of boiling water and clattering bowls filling the space. In the end, I wasn't the villainess locked away for the sake of a love story. I was the woman who stepped off the page and built something real, one bowl at a time.